The air in these places is different. It is not just the oxygen breathed by mortals, it is thinner, mixed with gold dust and the scent of $1,000 perfume. It coats your lungs, makes you feel heavy, slow, an intruder. The ballroom was an ocean of light, chandeliers dripping crystals that looked like frozen tears, reflecting the glitter on women who were sculpted, not born. The music was a low thrum, something classical that tried to sound elegant but just sounded expensive. It vibrated through the soles of my thin, black uniform shoes. My feet had stopped aching an hour ago and gone numb. That was worse. I was Lena. Just Lena. A name tag they did not even bother to print. Just a cheap plastic staff clip on the lapel of my borrowed polyester vest. I was nobody. A ghost carrying silver trays of champagne that cost more than my month's rent. My job was simple. Be invisible. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not exist. It is hard to be invisible when you are terrified. I navigated the islands of beautifully dressed people, their laughter sharp and brittle. They talked about acquisitions, about summers in places I could not pronounce, about problems that were not problems. I kept my eyes down, fixed on the level of the golden liquid in the flutes. My hand, usually so steady, had a tremor I could not control. This was not my usual catering gig. This was the penthouse of a man whose name was only ever whispered, a billionaire who owned half the skyline, and his guests were not just rich, they were powerful. I felt the eyes on me before I saw him. It was a physical sensation, like a sudden drop in temperature, a prickle on the back of my neck that made the small hairs stand up. I had felt it twice before in my life, once when I nearly stepped in front of a city bus, and once when a man followed me for 6 blocks in Brooklyn. It was the feeling of being prey. I broke protocol. I looked up. He was across the room, standing near a marble fireplace that was big enough to roast a man. He was not like the others. The other men wore their suits like costumes. He wore his like armor. It was dark, tailored so perfectly it seemed fused to his skin. He was tall, with the kind of severe, uncompromising stillness that draws all the light and noise in the room toward it, like a black hole. His hair was dark. His face was all hard angles and shadows. He looked like an old portrait, something timeless and dangerous. He was not watching the party. He was watching me. It was not the look I sometimes got from the finance types, the hungry, appraising glance that stripped me bare and dismissed me in one motion. This was different. This was cold, patient. It was observation. He was not looking at my body. He was looking at me. His eyes, even from that distance, were dark and heavy. And they held mine. A cold dread washed through me. I looked away immediately, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought the flimsy vest might betray its rhythm. I focused on the tray, on the bubbles, on anything else. I tried to melt back into the shadows near the wall, needing to escape that gaze. I could still feel it, burning a hole in the side of my face. I told myself he was just bored. Maybe I reminded him of someone who had cleaned his house. It did not matter. I just had to make it through the next 2 hours, collect my pay, and go back to my real life, where men like that did not exist. I moved again, forcing my numb feet to take me toward the terrace doors, where a cluster of guests needed refills. I kept my head down, a shield of polite servitude. It happened fast, the way disasters always do. A man, loud and red-faced from too much champagne, turned abruptly, his arm gesticulating wildly as he told some story. He did not see me. I saw him, but my feet were slow, trapped in the invisible mud of the party. He spun, his elbow catching the edge of my silver tray. Time slowed down. I saw the flutes lift, a ballet of crystal and alcohol launching into the air. They were heading straight for a woman in a dress that looked like spun silk, the color of a pale, pale pink rose. I reacted without thinking. It was not about the woman or the dress. It was about the sound of shattering glass, the scream, the attention. It was about me being fired. I lunged, dropping the tray handle and trying to catch the falling glasses with both hands. A clumsy, desperate juggle. I was not fast enough. I was never fast enough. Oh, I managed to catch one flute, but the others were going to hit her. I braced for the crash, for the shouting. It never came. A hand, large and impossibly quick, shot out from my side. It did not grab the glasses. It grabbed my arm. The grip was not gentle. It was steel. It clamped around my wrist, stopping my motion completely. The falling glasses missed the woman, shattering harmlessly on the thick Persian rug with a muffled crunch. The room went silent. The music, the laughter, everything just stopped. I was frozen, my arm still held in that iron grip. I looked up. He was there, the man from the fireplace, Rocco D'Angelo. I did not know his name then. I only knew the absolute, terrifying coldness of his eyes up close. They were darker than I thought. Not black, but a deep, bruised shade of midnight. He was close enough that I could smell him clean soap, expensive wool, and something else, something metallic and sharp, like old iron. He was not looking at the broken glass. He was not looking at the stunned woman in the pink dress or the man who had caused the spill. He was looking right at me. The silence in the room stretched, becoming thin and sharp, like a wire. Everyone was watching us. I tried to pull my arm back. His grip only tightened. It did not hurt, but it was absolute. There was no escaping it. "I'm sorry, sir," I whispered, the words scraping my throat. "I will clean it up." He ignored me. His gaze traced my face, from my hairline, down my nose, to my mouth, as if he were checking an inventory. It was the most intense scrutiny I had ever endured. He seemed to be looking for something. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Not recognition, not warmth, it was confirmation. He let go of my wrist, only to take my hand. His fingers laced through mine, a gesture so intimate, so possessive, that a gasp echoed through the ballroom. My hand was small and rough in his skin warm. I tried to snatch it back, horrified. This was insane. I was staff. He was him. "What are you doing?" I hissed, my voice shaking with fear and sudden, inexplicable anger. Rocco D'Angelo did not look at me. He raised his head, his voice cutting through the silence. It was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the room, a low rumble of absolute authority. "You're late, wife." The world stopped. I stared at him. Wife. He had said wife. The word hung in the air, electric and absurd. My mind went blank, a white wall of pure panic. I could feel dozens, maybe hundreds, of eyes stabbing into me. The woman in the pink dress looked aghast. The man who spilled the drinks looked terrified. What? My voice was barely a squeak. "I do not know you. Let go of me." I pulled, harder this time, but it was like pulling against a marble statue. He held me fast. His gaze finally settled back on me, and for the first time, I saw a sliver of something other than ice. It might have been amusement, dark and cold, but it was there. "You're making a scene," he murmured, his voice for me alone. "I'm making a scene," I was shaking, the adrenaline of the near spill replaced by a roaring, deafening confusion. "You just called me your wife. I am the waitress." "Not anymore," he said simply. He tugged my hand. It was not a request. It was a command. I stumbled forward, forced to follow him as he began to walk, not toward the exit, but toward the center of the room, toward the host of the party, who was watching with a look of utter bewilderment. "Rocco," the host started, a nervous smile on his face. Rocco D'Angelo held up his free hand, silencing the billionaire with a single gesture. He did not stop walking, pulling me along beside him. I was a spectacle, a stray dog he had just claimed on a leash. I tried to plant my feet, but my cheap shoes skidded on the polished floor. My mind was racing, trying to find an explanation. Was this a joke? A cruel prank played by the rich? Was he drunk? I looked at his face. He was not drunk. He was completely, terrifyingly sober. "Stop," I pleaded, keeping my voice low. "Please, you are mistaken. I am just working. This is my job." He stopped, turning to face me fully in the center of the dead, silent room. He was so tall I had to crane my neck. He brought my hand, the one he still held captive, up between us. "Your job," he said, his voice flat, "was to be here an hour ago." "I do not understand, sir." "You do not have to," he said. He then released my hand, only to slide his arm around my waist. He pulled me against his side. It was not a romantic embrace. It was an act of possession. I was pressed against the hard lines of his body, the solid muscle beneath the fine suit. I felt trapped, branded. The stubbornness in me, the part of me that had survived Brooklyn, that fought off creeps on the subway, that never let anyone push me around, finally exploded. "Get your hands off me," I snarled, pushing against his chest. He did not budge, just watched me struggle for a second, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned down, his mouth so close to my ear that his breath was a warm shock against my skin. "You have two choices, Lena," he whispered, and the fact that he knew my name sent a new wave of ice through my veins. "You can walk out of here with me quietly right now, or I can have every door in this city locked, and you will walk out of here with me anyway. It makes no difference to me, but I am leaving, and you are coming." His words were not a threat. They were a statement of fact, as clear and cold as the diamonds glittering at the throats of the women staring at us. I looked around the room. No one moved. No one was going to help me. In this world, he was the gravity, and everyone else just orbited. My fight evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. This was not a joke. This was real. I stopped pushing. I looked up into those dark, impossible eyes. "Who are you?" I whispered. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It did not reach his eyes. He turned away from me, addressing the room again as he kept me pinned to his side. "My apologies for the interruption," he announced. "My wife was detained." He turned, and this time, he propelled me forward. I had no choice but to move with him, my numb feet stumbling to keep up with his long, confident strides. He walked me straight out of that ballroom, out of that life, and into his. I did not look back. I just held on to the one thought I had left. This was not happening. This was a nightmare. But the grip on my waist was real. The solid warmth of his body was real, and the terrified silence that followed us out the door was the most real thing I had ever known. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off the suffocating silence of the ballroom. The gold-plated doors reflected a distorted version of us, him, a dark, unmoving tower, and me, a small, rumpled mess pinned to his side. My cheap polyester vest was scratchy against my cheek, which was pressed into the hard muscle of his chest. His arm was still locked around my waist. I was trembling so hard my teeth chattered. "Please!" I tried again, my voice a dry rasp. "This is a mistake. I am not your wife. I do not even know you." The elevator hummed, its descent smooth and silent. He did not look at me. He stared straight ahead at the golden doors, his profile like something carved from granite. He seemed to be listening, not to me, but to something far away. "Your name is Lena," he stated. It was not a question. My blood ran cold. "How do you know my name?" "I know everything about you," he said, his voice a low, calm rumble that vibrated through his chest and into mine. "I know you live at 417 DeGraw Street in Brooklyn. Apartment 2. B. I know your rent is $780 a month, and you are 2 weeks behind. I know you have worked for this catering company for 6 months, and before that, you worked at the diner on Atlantic Avenue. I know you have no family." A choked sound escaped my throat. It was all true. Every word. This was not a random abduction. It was a calculated, planned extraction. The panic that had been a roaring fire in my chest turned into a solid block of ice. The elevator doors opened onto a private garage, all polished concrete and harsh fluorescent lights. There was one car waiting. A black sedan so large and dark it looked like a hearse. A man in a suit, built like a refrigerator, stood by the rear door. He did not look surprised to see me. He simply opened the door. Rocco D'Angelo propelled me forward. I stumbled, my numb feet barely cooperating. "No," I said, a final, pathetic burst of defiance. I tried to dig my heels in. His arm tightened, lifting me slightly off the ground. "Do not fight me, Lena," he said, his voice still quiet, but with an edge like a razor. "It will not end well for you. Get in the car." He did not wait for my compliance. He maneuvered me into the back seat, his body shielding mine from the view of the driver, and then slid in beside me. The car was cavernous, smelling of rich leather and the same cold, iron scent I smelled on him. The door shut with a heavy, final thud. The driver got in, the partition slid up, and the car began to move, gliding silently up a ramp and out into the glittering chaos of the New York night. I scrambled away from him, pressing myself against the far door. My mind was a blank, screaming static. I stared out the window at the city lights blurring past, streaks of red and gold and white. They looked alien, like the lights of a city I had never seen before. I was Lena, just Lena, and my life, the one that was so hard and so small, had just ended. That life had not been much, but it was mine. It was built from scraps. I grew up in a part of Brooklyn where the buildings were old and tired, leaning on each other to stay standing. My childhood was not a childhood. It was a training ground. It was learning how to make $5 last 3 days. It was learning how to walk fast with your head down, how to look like you knew where you were going even when you were hopelessly lost. It was learning that nobody ever gives you anything for free. My mother, she was soft in a world that demanded steel. She faded out of my life slowly. Then all at once, leaving me with nothing but a pile of bills and a one-room apartment that smelled like dust and old regrets. I was 16. From then on, it was just work. I cleaned houses. I washed dishes in a 24-hour diner. I stocked shelves. I did anything that paid cash and did not ask questions. Love was a fantasy, a story told in movies that had nothing to do with my reality. Love was for girls who had time to dream, girls who were not worried about the electricity being shut off. My dreams were smaller, sharper. My dream was a full refrigerator. My dream was a pair of shoes without holes. I found the catering company through a classified ad. Event staff needed, good pay, flexible hours. It was a step up. It meant I could wear a vest instead of an apron. It meant I could see how the other side lived. The people in the penthouses. I served them their tiny, perfect food and their expensive champagne. And I watched them. And I felt nothing but the vast, cold distance between their world and mine. I had no ambition to join them. I just wanted to take their money, go home, lock my 2 deadbolts, and sleep for a few hours before I had to do it all again. That was my plan. Survive. That was all. And now this. I looked at the man beside me, and he was sitting perfectly still, looking out his own window, as if he were on a casual drive. "Who are you?" I asked again, my voice stronger now. The ice in my chest was turning to a slow, cold anger. "What do you want?" He turned his head slowly. His face was all shadows in the dim light of the car. "My name is Rocco D'Angelo." The name meant nothing to me. It was just a name. Italian. Elegant. It did not explain what he was doing. He must have seen the lack of recognition in my eyes. A small, dry smile touched his lips. "You do not read the right papers, Lena." "Oh, I do not read any papers," I said, my voice sharp. "I work. Or I did. You probably got me fired." "You will not be working for them again," he said, as if stating the weather. "You cannot just take me," I said, my voice rising. "This is kidnapping. I will scream." "Go ahead," he said, his voice calm. "The car is soundproof. The glass is 3 inches thick. No one will hear you." I stared at him. My bluff called. He was not lying. The silence in the car was absolute, the city noise just a distant, invisible hum. "Why?" I finally whispered. "Why me? What did I do?" "You did nothing," he said. He turned to face me more fully, his large body shifting on the leather seat. "This is not about something you did. It is about who you are." "I am nobody," so I spat. "You just proved it. You know I have nothing. I am a waitress." "You are not nobody, Mawagit," he said. His dark eyes locked on mine, and that same intense, heavy gaze from the party pinned me to the seat. "You are the key." "The key to what?" He did not answer. He just watched me. That same look of confirmation. It was chilling. The world Rocco D'Angelo lived in was not the one I saw from the sidewalk. It was not the world of billionaires and tech moguls who threw parties. His was an older world, a darker one. His power did not come from the stock market. It came from blood, from history, from fear. He was the head of the D'Angelo family, a name that made politicians nervous and police captains look the other way. His past was a tapestry of whispered violence. Men disappeared. Rivals had unfortunate accidents. Deals were made in shadowed back rooms that changed the shape of the city. He was a ghost who cast a very long shadow. I did not know any of this. Not then. I only knew the man sitting next to me was the most dangerous thing I had ever encountered. But the outline, it had said, "A soft heart." I looked at his face, at the hard line of his jaw, the severe set of his mouth, the cold, cold eyes. I saw no softness. I saw no heart. I saw a predator. "Where are you taking me?" I asked. My voice flat, the fight had gone out of me, replaced by a dreadful, weary curiosity. "Home," he said. "That is not my home," I said. "My home is in Brooklyn." "No," he said, and his voice was so certain it terrified me. "Your home is with me now." The car was moving downtown, past the bright lights of Midtown, toward the older, darker parts of the city. We drove for what felt like an hour, in total silence. I watched the neighborhoods change, from glass towers to brick warehouses, until finally, we pulled up to a massive steel gate. It slid open without a sound, and the car drove into a courtyard surrounded by a high stone wall. He was taking me to a fortress. The driver opened his door, but Rocco put a hand on my arm, not a grip, just a touch, but it held me in place. "Before we go inside," he said, "you need to understand something." I waited. "You will be safe here. No one can hurt you." I almost laughed. "No one except you. You mean?" His eyes hardened. "I will not hurt you, Lena. I am doing this to protect you." "Protect me," I said, my voice shaking with bitter irony. "Protect me from what? From earning my own living from my empty apartment. I was fine." "You were not fine," Marhi said, "and you were not safe. You just did not know it." He got out of the car and came around to my side. Opening the door, he held out his hand. I stared at it. It was the hand that had gripped my wrist, the hand that had claimed me. "And what if I do not want to be safe?" I asked. Ignoring his hand and sliding out on my own, I stood up, my back straight. I was still in my stupid vest, my hair falling out of its bun. I felt small, but I would not let him see me break. He looked down at me, his face unreadable in the dim light of the courtyard. "It does not matter what you want," he said, his voice soft, almost gentle, which was somehow more terrifying than his anger. "You are here, and you are mine." He turned and walked toward the massive front doors of the house, not looking back. He knew I would follow. Where else could I go? I was trapped. I was in the heart of a world I did not know existed, claimed by a man who was a walking shadow. And as I took the first step to follow him into that fortress, a single, cold question echoed in my mind. He had called me his wife. He had called me the key. What did he want me to unlock, and what would happen to me when he was done? I was in his world now, and I knew, with a certainty that settled in my bones, that ghosts in this world did not get to leave. The house was a fortress, but it was also a cage, a very beautiful cage. It had been 4 days since Rocco D'Angelo had ripped me from that ballroom, from my life. 4 days of suffocating silence and gilded surfaces. My polyester vest was gone, replaced by clothes I found hanging in a closet the size of my entire Brooklyn apartment, silk and cashmere things, soft against my skin, but they felt like a costume. I was still Lena, the waitress, just dressed in the skin of someone else. He gave me the run of the house, which felt like a joke. The house was enormous, a maze of dark wood, heavy furniture, and thick rugs that swallowed every sound. There were windows, massive ones, but they only looked out onto the high stone walls of the courtyard. I had seen 2 other people, a woman named Sophia, older, with sad eyes and a silent mouth, who brought me food on silver trays, and the refrigerator-sized man from the garage, who stood at the end of the hallway. He never spoke. He just watched. Rocco himself was a ghost. He would be gone when I woke up, and he would return late at night. I would hear the heavy front door open and close, his low voice a rumble in the foyer, but then nothing. He left me alone. This was somehow worse than being watched. It made me feel like an object, a thing he had acquired and stored, to be dealt with later. The silence gave me time to think, and my fear, which had been a blinding white panic, was cooling into something harder, anger, and beneath the anger, a deep, restless curiosity. He had said, "You are the key." He had said, "I am protecting you." These words circled in my head. They were lies. You do not protect someone by kidnapping them. You do not claim a stranger as your wife for her own safety. He wanted something. And if I was ever going to get out of this cage, I had to figure out what it was. On the 5th day, the curiosity won. The refrigerator man was at his usual post, but I walked right past him. I needed to know what was in this house. I needed to find a crack in the wall. I explored. I opened heavy doors to rooms filled with furniture draped in white sheets, rooms that smelled like dust and old secrets, a library with thousands of books that looked like they had never been read, a formal dining room that could seat 30 people. And then I found his office. The door was not locked. I hesitated, my hand on the cold brass knob. This was a line. I could feel it. Crossing it meant I was no longer a passive victim. I was something else. I was a spy in my own prison. I pushed the door open. It was not like the rest of the house. This room was alive. It smelled of him, that iron scent, and old paper and faint, stale cigar smoke. One wall was all windows, looking out onto a different, smaller garden. The other walls were lined with shelves, but not just books. This room was a command center. And then I saw it. On the wall behind his massive desk, there was a large corkboard. It was covered in photographs, maps of the city, and notes. Red yarn connected pictures, black lines connected names. It was the kind of board I'd seen in police movies. My heart hammered. I stepped closer. I saw pictures of men in suits, men in tracksuits, men who looked like they lived hard lives. I saw names, and I saw one name, circled in red marker, over and over, Vito Mancini. A picture of a man was pinned next to the name. He was older than Rocco, with a wide face and eyes that smiled, but his mouth did not. He looked like the kind of man who would kiss a baby and then break your legs. A line of thick, angry red yarn connected Vito Mancini's picture to one of Rocco. This was his enemy. I scanned the rest of the board, my mind racing, trying to make sense of the web he had built, and then I saw it, tucked in a corner, as if it were a starting point or an afterthought. I was not sure which. It was a photograph of me. My breath caught in my throat. It was not a new picture. It was old, maybe a year old. I was in my diner uniform, the ugly pink one, laughing at something outside the frame. Someone had taken it without me knowing. He had not just seen me at the party. He had not just found me. He had been watching me for a long time. "You are not nobody." His words echoed in my head. This board was the proof. I was part of this war. It is rude to go through a man's things. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. Rocco D'Angelo stood in the doorway. He was not angry. He was perfectly, terrifyingly calm, which was so much worse. He wore a dark suit. His tie loosened. He looked tired. "Who is Vito Mancini?" I asked. My voice did not shake. I was too cold to shake. He walked into the room, his eyes going from my face to the board and then back. He stood in front of the picture of the smiling man. "He is a problem," Rocco said. "He is your enemy," I stated. Rocco nodded, his gaze fixed on the photo. "He's a snake who thinks he is a dragon. He wants what I have. He wants my city. He wants my family. And he will burn the world down to get it." "And me?" I pointed to my own picture, the smiling, ignorant girl in the diner uniform. "What does he want with me? What do you want with me?" Rocco's expression did not change. He looked at my picture for a long moment, his face a mask of stone. "He wants to destroy everything I value." He looked back at me, his dark eyes boring into mine, and I cannot let that happen. He did not explain. He did not tell me why my picture was there. He just let the implication hang in the air, thick and heavy. "You have been a prisoner here for 5 days, he said, changing the subject, as if we had been discussing the weather. "You need to eat something that does not come on a tray." I was stunned by the sudden shift. "What?" "Get your coat, Gandiward," he said, walking to his desk. "We are going out to dinner." "Going out?" I almost laughed. "Out there where he is," I gestured at the board. "You're safer with me than you are in here." His voice flat. "He knows I have a guest. He does not know who. He is watching this house. He is waiting for me to move. Tonight we move." "You are using me as bait," I whispered, horrified. "I am showing him you are not a weakness," Rocco corrected me, though it sounded like the same thing. "I am showing him you are mine. Now go, get your coat." I was not given a choice. 20 minutes later, I was back in the black sedan, the leather feeling cold even through the expensive wool coat he had provided. I sat pressed against the door, as far from him as I could get. We drove to a restaurant in a neighborhood of old brick buildings and narrow streets. The sign was small, just a name and elegant script. When we walked in, the restaurant went silent, just like the ballroom, but this was a different kind of silence. It was not shock, it was respect, fearful respect. The owner, a small man with a worried face, rushed over and bowed his head. "Mr. D'Angelo, your table is ready." Rocco kept a hand on the small of my back, steering me through the tables. I felt every eye in the place on me. They were not looking at me with curiosity. They were looking at me with pity. They saw what I was, a captive, a possession. We sat in a booth at the back, dark and private. He ordered for both of us in rapid, low Italian. "This is not protection, Rocco," I said, my voice low and fierce. "This is a performance. You are showing me off." "I am showing them you are protected by my name," he said, his eyes scanning the room. He was not relaxed. He was coiled, like a panther pretending to rest. "There is a difference." "There is no difference," I said. "I'm still in a cage." He looked at me then, his gaze intense. "The cage is the only thing keeping you alive, Lena. You saw the board. This is not a game. Vito Mancini does not take prisoners." "Neither do you," I shot back. A muscle in his jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to speak, and then the world exploded. The front windows of the restaurant dissolved in a storm of shattering glass. The sound was deafening. A roar of gunfire that punched the air out of my lungs. People screamed. I was frozen for a half a second, my mind unable to process the noise, the chaos. Rocco moved. He did not reach for a weapon. He did not duck. He lunged across the table and grabbed the front of my coat and hauled me off the seat. I fell to the floor, and in the same motion, he was on top of me. His body was a solid, heavy weight, shielding me completely. He pushed my head down, his hand gripping the back of my neck, holding me against the carpet, which smelled like spilled wine. "Do not move," he commanded, his voice a low growl in my ear. The air filled with noise, more gunfire, closer this time, shouting in Italian, the crash of tables overturning. It was everywhere. I was trembling, My face pressed into the floor, my hands clutching at the fabric of his suit jacket. His heart was hammering against my back, a steady, fast beat. He was not scared, he was alive. I could feel the tension in every muscle of his body as he pressed me harder into the floor, making himself the only target. Then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. The roaring silence that fell was almost as terrifying as the noise. The only sound was a woman sobbing somewhere in the room and the drip of liquid. Rocco did not move for a full 10 seconds. He just stayed on top of me, his breathing heavy, his hand still locked on my neck. "It is clear, boss," a voice called out. It was the driver. Rocco let out a breath and slowly, heavily, pushed himself off me. I gasped, rolling over, my lungs desperate for air. The room was destroyed. It was dark. The lights shot out, filled with smoke that burned my throat. Rocco was crouching beside me, his gun now in his hand. He was not looking at the room. He was looking at me. His eyes were not cold. They were on fire. A dark, blazing inferno of adrenaline and something else. A possessive, raw fury. His hand came up, not gently, and gripped my chin, tilting my face to the dim light from the kitchen. His eyes scanned me, looking for blood, for injury. His thumb brushed roughly across my cheek. "Are you hit?" he demanded, his voice rough. "No," I whispered. I was shaking so hard I could barely speak. "I do not think so." He stared at me for 1 second longer. I saw it then. It was not just fury. It was worry. Real, sharp worry. He had been terrified, not for himself, for me. He had shielded me. He had used his own body to stop the bullets. That realization hit me harder than the attack. "Get her out," he snarled at his driver. He pulled me to my feet. My legs felt like water. He half dragged, half carried me toward a back exit, his body still partially shielding mine. We moved through the wrecked dining room, past unmoving shapes on the floor. I kept my eyes on the back of his head, refusing to see what was left. We were shoved into the car, and it peeled out of the alley, tires screaming. I sat in the dark, my arms wrapped around myself. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a cold, sick emptiness. Rocco got in the front seat, barking orders into a phone in Italian. His voice was pure rage. I had wanted to leave. I had wanted to escape his world. But tonight, his world had come for me, and the only reason I was alive was because the man I hated, the man who had stolen me, had put himself between me and the bullets. He hung up the phone and the car went silent, except for the hum of the engine. I finally found my voice. "This is because of me," I whispered. "He knew you were there. He knew you had me." Rocco's head turned, his silhouette dark against the passing streetlights. "He knew I had you," he said, his voice flat and cold again. But I had heard the rage, I had seen the worry, and now he knows I will not let you go. I leaned my head back against the leather. I had wanted to escape, but I saw the truth now. Rocco was not lying. Walking out of his house was not an option. There was no my world to go back to. I had been marked. And the most terrifying part, the part that made my stomach twist and my hands shake, when his body had covered mine, in that moment of pure terror, I had felt it, the one thing I had not felt in my entire life. Safe. The ride back to the fortress was silent, but it was a new kind of silence. It was not the cold, empty silence of my first few days. It was a thick, heavy silence, charged with the gunpowder and adrenaline of what had just happened. I did not huddle against the door this time. I sat. I watched the city lights flash over Rocco's face in the front seat. He was a dark, brooding shape, his rage a palpable thing radiating from the set of his shoulders. He had saved my life. He had thrown his body over mine. That fact was a hard, uncomfortable stone in my gut. Hating him had been simple. He was the kidnapper, the monster, the cage builder. But the man who had shielded me, his heart hammering against my back, was not simple at all. He was something else, something more terrifying. He was a man who protected what was his. and he had declared in front of the entire world that I was his. We swept back through the steel gates. This time, I was not a terrified captive being dragged inside. I was a survivor. Walking in on my own 2 feet, my mind sharp and cold, the house felt different. It was no longer just a prison. It was the only safe place in a city that was trying to kill me. Rocco did not speak. He stormed past me, shrugging out of his suit jacket. There was a rip in the shoulder, a long tear where a bullet or shrapnel had grazed the fabric. My breath hitched. He had been that close. He went straight to his office, his driver and 2 other men I had never seen before following him. The door shut, and I heard his voice, a low, angry bark of Italian. I was left alone in the massive foyer, my hands still shaking. Sophia, the quiet housekeeper, appeared from the shadows. She looked at me, her sad eyes taking in my disheveled state, the smoke in my hair. She did not say a word. She just gestured for me to follow. She led me upstairs to a different room, a suite even larger than the first. A fire was already burning in the fireplace, and a deep tub was steaming in the adjoining bathroom. "You should bathe," she said, her voice a soft, accented whisper. "There are clothes." I nodded, numb. I locked the door behind her, a useless gesture. I knew and stripped off the expensive, smoke-stained clothes. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was pale, my eyes huge and dark, my lips swollen where I had bitten it. I looked like a victim. I sank into the hot water, and the trembling finally stopped. I replayed the attack, the glass, the noise, and Rocco's weight on me. He had not hesitated. Not for a second. Waitress. This was not a game. This was a war. And Vito Mancini, the smiling man from the photograph, was not just Rocco's enemy. He was mine now, too. I had been drawn into his world, not gradually, but in a single, violent shove, my old life. The one I had been mourning, the life of a waitress struggling for rent, it was gone. It had burned away in that restaurant. The life I had now was one of high stone walls, silent housekeepers, and men who shielded you from bullets. Over the next few weeks, the house changed. It was no longer a quiet prison. It was a command center. Men came and went at all hours, dark-suited and grim-faced. The silence was gone, replaced by the constant low hum of a machine at war. And my role changed. Rocco did not leave me alone anymore. He would be in his office, the door open. When I walked by, he would look up. "Sit," he would say. It was not a request. I would sit on the leather sofa, watching him. He worked the phones. He studied maps. He gave orders. He never explained what he was doing. He just let me be there. He let me listen. At first, I understood nothing. It was a tangle of names and places, but I was a quick study. I had survived Brooklyn. This was just a different kind of street. I started to connect the dots, to understand the flow of his business, the territories, the allegiances. I learned the names of his capos, his top soldiers, and I learned the name of the main threat, Vito Mancini. The attacks became more frequent. Not on us, I did not leave the house again, but on his operations. A warehouse torched, a shipment hijacked, a man who worked for him found in the river, each time. Rocco's anger would settle deeper, colder. "Why do you let me hear this?" I asked him one night. He was standing by the window, looking out at the dark garden, a glass of something amber in his hand. "You wanted to know who I was," he said, not turning. "This is who I am." "You are a general," I said. He turned his head, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "I am a king, and kings have to protect their territory." "And their queen," I asked, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "Is that what I am, the wife?" He set his glass down and walked toward me. He stopped just inches away, looking down at me on the sofa. "Vito attacked that restaurant because he thought you were my woman. He thought you were a weakness, a piece of leverage." "And was he right?" "He was wrong," Rocco said, his voice low. "He thought I would trade something for you. He did not understand. I do not trade for what is mine. I just destroy the man who tried to take it." He was close, too close. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I could smell the whiskey on his breath. My heart was not hammering with fear. It was a different rhythm, something slow and heavy. "So I am just a symbol," I said, "a piece in your game." "You were," he said. His hand came up, but he did not touch me. His fingers hovered near my face. "Now, you are a problem for him." He showed his hand. "He wants you. That makes you valuable. That makes you dangerous." I started to learn. I was not just an observer. I began to speak. "That man," I said one afternoon, pointing to a photo on his war board, a new face. "He was at the party." Rocco looked up from his desk, his focus sharp. "Where?" "By the terrace. He was talking to the host, but he was watching you." Rocco stared at me. "You are certain?" "I am a waitress," I said. "It is my job to notice people who are not eating or drinking." He was working, just like me. Rocco made a phone call. His voice was low, fast. He hung up and looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You have good eyes." The man from the party was one of Mancini's. He had been a spy inside the billionaire's home. Rocco's men picked him up 2 hours later. I had become a part of it. I was not just a prisoner. I was useful. I was a strategic partner. I also began to see the man under the armor. He was brutal. Yes, he was ruthless. But he was not a monster without cause. I saw him with Sophia, the housekeeper. He spoke to him in gentle Italian and asked about her son. I saw him with his men. He was hard on them, but he was loyal. He had rules, an old dark code. He was still my jailer. I was still trapped. The stone walls were still there, but the lines were blurring. My fear of him was being replaced by a complex, terrifying understanding. One night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Rocco was on edge. He had been expecting a call, a check-in from a team moving a large amount of money. The call was an hour late. "Something is wrong," he said, pacing his office. "Where were they supposed to be?" I asked. He pointed to a spot on the map, a warehouse district near the docks. "It is a trap, Rocco," I said, standing up. "I know," he snapped. "No, you do not," I said, walking to the board. "Vito knows you are loyal. He knows you will go yourself if your men are in trouble. He's not hitting your men. He's waiting for you." Rocco stopped pacing. He looked at me. "How do you know that?" Because it is what I would do." I said. "You are the king. You cut the head off the snake. You have been hitting his operations. He is hitting you." The phone rang. It was his driver. "Boss, there is a situation. The team is dark." Rocco grabbed his keys. "I am on my way." "No," I said, grabbing his arm. It was the first time I had touched him voluntarily. His arm was like a steel cable. He froze, looking down at my hand on his suit. "Do not go," I pleaded. "Send someone else." "Send everyone, them. But do not go yourself. He's waiting for you. I can feel it." "They are my men," he said, his voice flat. "And you are their boss," I said, my grip tightening. "If you go, you will not come back, and Vito wins. He gets your city. He gets me." That stopped him. The word "me" hung in the air. He stared into my eyes, and I saw a war happening behind his duty, his anger, and something else. "What do you suggest, Lena?" he asked, his voice quiet. "He's waiting for you at the warehouse," I said, my mind racing. "So do not go to the warehouse. He has pulled his best men for this trap. That means his other properties are vulnerable. Find his home. Find where he sleeps. While he is waiting for you in the dark, you burn his house down." The silence in the room was absolute. Rocco's dark eyes searched my face, not as a captor, but as an equal. He was seeing me, truly seeing me. For the first time, the girl from the diner, the key. A slow, dangerous smile touched his lips. It was the first real smile I had ever seen from him. It transformed his face, making him look younger and 1,000 times more dangerous. He let go of his keys and picked up the phone. He did not call his men. He called a number I did not recognize. "Tony," he said, his voice pure ice. "Change of plans. We are not going to the docks. I want every man we have. We are going to Mancini's." He hung up and looked at me. My hand was still on his arm. "You are not a waitress, Lena," he said, his voice a low rumble. He covered my hand with his large, warm grip swallowing mine. "You are a queen." I pulled my hand back, a cold shiver running through me. I had done it. I had saved him. I had influenced him. But as I watched him shrug on his coat, check his weapon, and walk out that door, a cold dread settled over me. I had not just saved him. I had just become a willing player in his war. I had just helped him plan an attack. I was not his prisoner anymore. I was his accomplice, and I was not sure which one was worse. The heavy front door boomed shut, and the silence that fell was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was not the quiet of peace. It was the suffocating, heavy vacuum left behind by a man who had just gone to war. I stood in the foyer, my hand still tingling from where his had covered mine. I had sent him. I had given him the plan, burn his house down. My words, my strategy. I walked back to his office, the war room. It felt like my room now. The big leather chair still held the faint warmth of his body. I sat in it, staring at the corkboard. Vito Mancini, Tony, the docks, the warehouse. A cold, sick feeling began to creep up my spine. It was too simple. Vito Mancini was a snake. Rocco had said he had been one step ahead of Rocco for months. He had set the trap at the restaurant. He had set the trap at the warehouse. Why would he be stupid enough to leave his own home vulnerable while he waited at the docks? "He's waiting for you," I had told Rocco, and I was right. But what if the trap was not the warehouse? What if the trap was the counterattack? My eyes scanned the board. Vito, Vito, Vito. And then I thought of the name Rocco had spoken into the phone. Tony. Why did I know that name? I closed my eyes, forcing myself back to the party. The first night, the glitter, the champagne, the spies, the man on the terrace. I had spotted him. But there was another one. He was not watching Rocco. He was near the bar, talking to the man I had identified. They were laughing. A big man, broad shoulders. He had turned, and I had seen his face. My eyes snapped open. I knew him. I went back to the board, searching for his picture. It was not there. Of course it was not. He was not an enemy. He was an ally. He was Tony, the man Rocco had called, the man he was with right now. "He's a snake who thinks he is a dragon," Rocco had said of Vito. But what if there were two snakes? The trap at the warehouse was not a failure. It was a test. Vito and Tony wanted to see if Rocco would come. He had not. I had stopped him. So they set a new trap. A better one I had helped them build. They knew Rocco's men were hit. They knew he was angry. They wanted him to retaliate. They had left a trail of breadcrumbs, making it look like Vito was waiting at the docks, leaving his home undefended. And Tony, his trusted brother, was leading him right into the slaughter. "Oh my God," I whispered. I grabbed the desk phone. I did not know anyone's number. I dialed 0. Sophia answered. "Get me Marco," I said, my voice sharp. "Marco, the driver, the refrigerator." "He's not here, Signora," she said. "Find me someone. Anyone. Now." A minute later, a man I did not know, one of the house guards, appeared at the office door. He was young, his eyes wary. "You called—" "Get a car, we are leaving," I commanded. He blinked. "I cannot do that, ma'am. Mr. D'Angelo's orders. You stay here." Mr. D'Angelo is walking into an ambush," I said, my voice low and fierce. I pointed to the board. "He's being led into it by Tony. They are working together, Vito and Tony. They are going to kill him." The guard's face hardened. "Tony Antonio Moretti, you are crazy, lady. He's the boss's right hand, his oldest friend." "He is a traitor," I shouted. "Think the restaurant, the warehouse. How does Mancini know where he is? Every single time Tony is feeding him, and he just fed Rocco to the wolves. We have to go." "My orders are to protect you," he said. his hand moving to his side. "And that means keeping you in this house." I stepped toward him, my hands clenched. I was a waitress. I was a prisoner. I was nothing. But Rocco had looked at me, his eyes blazing, and he had called me his queen. "Your job is to protect what is his," I snarled, using the same cold authority I had heard in Rocco's voice. "And he is about to lose everything. If you let him die, what do you think will happen to you when Vito Mancini's men come through that gate? Because they will... Tonight, after they are done with him, you want to follow orders. Fine. Follow this one. I am Lena D'Angelo, and I am telling you the king is in danger. Now get the damn car." The guard stared at me. I saw the doubt in his eyes, the fear, and then the decision. He nodded once. "This way." We ran. We took the same black sedan I had been dragged into weeks ago. The city flew by in a blur of panic. The guard, his name was Paul, drove with a controlled recklessness, his eyes scanning every intersection. "Where are they?" he asked. "Mancini's house, do you know where it is?" "I know it." He drove faster. My heart was a cold, hard knot in my chest. I was not afraid of the gunfire. I was not afraid of Vito Mancini. I was afraid of being too late. I was afraid of the silence that would follow. We screeched to a halt a block away from a large, walled compound, just like Rocco's. But here, the silence was wrong. It was broken by the sharp, contained pop, pop, pop of gunfire. "It has already started," Paul said, his face grim. He drew his weapon. "Stay here. Lock the doors." "No," I said, getting out of the car. "Ma'am, I cannot protect you in there." "I am not here to be protected," I said, and I started to run toward the gate. It was open. A dark sedan was parked halfway through, its doors open, 2 bodies on the ground beside it, Rocco's men. Paul cursed and ran after me, grabbing my arm. "Get behind me!" We moved through the courtyard. It was a war zone. Bodies were everywhere. Men from both families. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of cordite. The main house was dark, but flashes of gunfire lit the windows. "Rocco!" I screamed when... Get down," Paul tackled me, pulling me behind a large stone fountain. A spray of bullets stitched the air where I had been standing. "We cannot stay here," Paul hissed, reloading. I looked past him. The firefight was concentrated on the front steps. Rocco's men were pinned down, taking heavy fire from the roof and the upper windows. It was a massacre. It was the trap I had seen in my head. And then I saw him. Rocco was not on the steps. He was to the side, near the garage, fighting his way forward. He was with 3 other men, and one of them was Tony. They were moving from cover to cover, a tight, professional unit. But I watched Tony. He fired into the windows, but his shots were wide. He was not trying to hit anyone. He was just making noise. "There," I pointed. "It is Rocco." Paul looked. "The boss is fine. He is with Tony. We have to go." "No," I said, my eyes locked on the scene. "Watch him. Watch Tony." As I said it, a new figure appeared in the doorway of the house, shielded by 2 men. He was older, with a wide, smiling face. Vito Mancini. He raised a hand, a signal. The men firing on Rocco's team on the steps suddenly concentrated their fire on Rocco himself. He and his men were instantly pinned down behind a low wall. Rocco returned fire. Beside him, Tony ducked, fumbling with his gun. "I am out," he yelled to Rocco. Rocco nodded, not looking, firing his last shots to cover him. "Fall back to the car." Rocco turned his back on Tony to reload. This was it. Tony did not pull a new magazine. He pulled a different gun, a small one from his ankle. He raised it, aiming not at the house, but at the center of Rocco's back. I did not plan, I just moved. I broke cover. I ran from behind the fountain, straight into the open, killing ground of the courtyard. Paul screamed my name. "Rocco!" I shrieked. He turned, his head snapping toward my voice. He saw me, and his eyes widened, not in recognition, but in pure, animal fury that I would be so stupid. "Get back!" he roared. "Tony!" I screamed, pointing. "He is the traitor, it's Tony." Time stopped. Rocco's head turned from me to Tony. He saw the gun. He saw the betrayal in his friend's eyes. Tony's face contorted in rage. He had been seen. He shifted his aim from Rocco to me. He never fired. Rocco moved faster than I thought a man could move. He did not go for his own gun. He closed the distance in one step and drove his shoulder into Tony's chest, slamming him against the garage wall. The gun fired, the bullet going wild. I heard a thud, a sick, wet sound, and then another. Rocco was not a king. He was a butcher. I stood frozen, my chest heaving. Vito Mancini, standing on the porch, was staring at me. His trap was broken, his inside man was gone, and he was looking at me, the waitress, the ghost in the machine. His smile faded. He turned and ran back into the house. "He's getting away," I yelled. Rocco did not hear me. He was still standing over what was left of Tony. His rage was a black hole, pulling everything in. Paul was grabbing me. "We have to go now, Lena." "No," I said, pulling away from him. "He's getting away." Vito was running out a side door, heading for a car parked in the alley. I was not a killer. I was not a soldier. But I was the queen. I ran, not toward the fight, but toward the gate he had come through, the gate he thought was his escape. I saw the guard post, a small brick box inside the wall. The door was open, the guard dead. I slid inside, my hands searching the panel. It was just like Rocco's, a big red button labeled Gate. I slammed my palm onto it. A loud alarm blared, and the massive wrought iron gates began to groan, sliding shut. Vito Mancini heard it. He stopped, his hand on his car door. He turned and saw me in the guard booth, his face, even from 50 yards away, was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He raised his gun. I ducked as the glass of the booth exploded above my head. Another shot, and then another. And then silence. I peeked up. Vito was still standing there, but his gun was pointed at the ground. He was looking at Rocco, who was walking calmly across the courtyard toward him, tossing his empty weapon aside. The war was over. Rocco did not even look at his defeated enemy. He walked right past him. He walked to the guard booth, his face covered in shadow and blood, Tony's blood. He stopped in front of me. I was shaking, my knees giving out. I slid to the floor of the booth, my back against the wall. Rocco just stood there, breathing heavily. Then he looked at me, his chest rising and falling. He looked at the shattered glass. He looked at the closed gate. Then his eyes, dark and blazing, settled on mine. He did not say thank you. He did not ask if I was okay. He just stared at me, and I saw everything in that look. The fury, the shock, the betrayal he had just suffered, and a new, terrifying, all-consuming realization. I had not just saved his life. I had saved his kingdom. I had been the key, just as he had said, and he knew, in that moment, that I was no longer his prisoner. I was his. The drive back was a void. There was no sound in the car but the engine. Paul drove, his knuckles white on the wheel. Rocco did not sit in the front. He sat in the back, with me. He did not sit close, but his presence filled the space, a heavy, dark energy that smelled of smoke and blood. I stared out the window. The city was just lights, just blurs of color. None of it seemed real. The world I used to live in, the world of buses and streetlights and people walking home from bars, was a movie playing on a distant screen. My world was the smell of gunpowder and the sick, wet sound Rocco had made when he dealt with Tony. We swept through the gates of the fortress. They slid shut behind us with a heavy, final sound. Home. Rocco got out, and he did not offer me a hand, he just waited. I slid out after him, my legs feeling like they were made of wet sand. Sophia was in the foyer, her face pale, her hands twisting in her apron. She had clearly heard the news. She looked at Rocco, then at me, her eyes wide with a new, fearful respect. Rocco walked past her, past me, straight into his office. He did not shut the door. He just went to the windows and stood there, his back to the room. I stood in the foyer, lost. Paul had disappeared. Sophia was looking at me, waiting for an order. I was the lady of the house. I was the queen. I had no idea what to do. "Go to bed, Sophia," I said, my voice sounding rough. She nodded and vanished into the shadows. I was alone. I should have gone upstairs. I should have gone to my room, locked the door, and hidden under the covers. I should have felt relieved, safe. I did not. I felt anchored. I walked to the office. I stood in the doorway. He had not moved. He was a statue of vengeance, staring out into his dark garden. His jacket was still on, stained and torn. His hands were clenched at his sides. "Rocco," I said. He did not turn. "You need to clean up," I said, my voice quiet. "You are bleeding." It was true. A dark patch was spreading on his white shirt, high on his shoulder, a graze, one of Tony's wild shots. Maybe he had not even noticed. He looked down at his shirt, as if seeing it for the first time. He did not seem to register it. "He was my brother," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "From the time we were boys, I ate at his mother's table. He was my son's godfather." It was the first I had heard of a son. It did not matter. All that mattered was the sound of his voice. It was not anger. It was hollow. The rage had burned out, leaving this. "He chose his path," I said. "And you," he said, turning slowly to face me. "You're just a girl from Brooklyn. How did you see it?" "I am not a girl from Brooklyn," I said, walking into the room. I felt exhaustion pulling at every muscle. "Not anymore. You made sure of that. I am just me. And I saw what you did not want to see. He was too close to you. He was family." "Family is not who you are born with," I said, stopping a few feet from him. "It is who you bleed for." His eyes, dark and haunted, fixed on mine. He looked at me for a long time, as if he were seeing me for the first time. The waitress, the ghost, the woman who had screamed his name in a courtyard full of bullets. "I need a doctor," he said, finally admitting his weakness. "I was the one who called. I was the one who brought Sophia back to get hot water and towels. I was the one who stood there while a quiet, grim man came, stitched Rocco's shoulder, and left without a word. And when the doctor was gone, I was the one who stayed." He sat in his desk chair, his shirt off, the white bandage a stark contrast to his dark skin. He looked broken. I did not know what to do. My old life had no script for this, so I did the only thing I could. I poured 2 glasses of the whiskey from his decanter. I handed one to him. He took it, his fingers brushing mine. His skin was cold. I sat on the sofa, the one where I used to sit as his prisoner, his observer. Now, I was something else. We drank in silence. The war was over, but the wreckage was all around us. Vito Mancini was in a federal holding cell. Rocco had made one call, a tip to the authorities. After he had disarmed him in the courtyard, Vito's empire was finished. But Tony's betrayal had left a wound that stitches could not close. "What happens now?" I asked. Rocco took a long drink, his eyes closed. "Now, we rebuild. We find the rats he left behind. We make it known that I am still the king." "And me?" I asked, my voice small. "Am I still your wife, your prisoner?" He opened his eyes and looked at me. The weariness in them was profound. "You were never my prisoner. Lena, not really. You were a possibility." He leaned forward, the glass in his hand. "I did not know your name when I saw you at that party. I just knew your face. I had seen it in a file." "What file?" "My father. He had an arrangement with a man a long time ago. That man had a daughter. My father owed him a debt. The debt was you." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "It was an old world promise, a betrothal, to seal an alliance. The man was your father, Lena, a man who got in over his head and traded his only daughter to save his own skin, and then disappeared." I stared at him. "My father, left, he died." "He ran," Rocco said, his voice flat. "And my father died. The promise was forgotten until Vito Mancini found it. He found your father. He found you. He knew you were the one loose thread, the one D'Angelo debt that was unpaid. He was going to use you against me, to claim you were his, to disgrace my family name. I could not let that happen. So you claimed me first, I whispered, the pieces clicking into place. The party. You're late, wife. It was not a kidnapping, it was an acquisition, a preemptive strike. I went to that party to find you, he admitted, to see who you were, to assess the threat. I was going to contain you, put you somewhere safe, out of his reach. But you did not, I said. No, he said, his gaze intense. I did not. I saw you, and I changed the plan. You took me, you locked me up. I brought you home, he corrected me, his voice rough. It was the only way to protect you, and I did not want to let you go. I looked down into my glass. The girl in the photograph? The key? It was all a lie. I was not a key. I was a pawn, a piece of property in a game that had started before I was born. So it was all a lie, I said, the words tasting like ash. The protection, keeping me close, calling me your queen. It was all just to keep your property out of another man's hands. I stood up, my hands shaking. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp rage. I was a fool. I had thought I was special. Lena, he said, standing up. He was unsteady, his hand going to his shoulder. Do not, I spat. Do not say another word. You used me. You used my fear, my mind, everything. You are no better than Vito. That is not true. Is it not you took my life? You built a cage and told me it was for my own good, when it was for your pride, your family name. It was for your good, he roared, and the king was back, the hollow man gone. His eyes blazed. Do you think Mancini would have treated you like I did? Do you think he would have given you rooms and clothes? He would have used you, broken you, and thrown you away to make a point. And what did you do? I screamed back. You made me your strategist. You made me complicit in your war. I have blood on my hands because of you. You have life because of me, he yelled. He stepped forward, grabbing my arm. Not a gentle touch. It was the steel grip from the party. I put my body between you and the bullets. I did not do that for my family name. I did not do that for a debt. I did it for you. We stood chest to chest, breathing hard, the air between us electric with truths and lies and the smoke of battle. His grip on my arm was painful, but I did not pull away. I hate you, I whispered, the words a lie, and we both knew it. I know, he said, his voice raw. His other hand came up, his thumb brushing my cheek, just as it had in the restaurant. His touch was rough, possessive. I cannot go back, I said, my voice breaking. I cannot be that girl again, the waitress. I do not even know who I am anymore. I know who you are, he said, his voice so low I could barely hear it. You are Lena D'Angelo, and you are mine. He pulled me against him. It was not gentle. It was a collision. His mouth found mine. It was not a kiss of love. It was a kiss of possession, of survival, of two worlds crashing together. It was brutal and desperate and raw, and it tasted like whiskey and smoke and blood. I did not fight him. I kissed him back. I kissed him back with all the rage and fear and confusion that had been boiling inside me for weeks. I gripped the front of his shirt, pulling him closer, as if he were the only solid thing in a world that had dissolved around me. This was not a choice. It was an inevitability. It was the end of the war, and the beginning of something far more dangerous. He was my captor. He was my savior. He was the man who had lied to me from the beginning. And I knew, as his hand slid from my arm to my waist, pulling me so close I could feel the frantic beat of his heart, that I was not his prisoner. I was not his partner. I was his, and I would never ever be free. That kiss was not the end. It was the beginning. It broke, not gently, but like a fever, leaving us both breathless and shaking in the wreckage of his office. I stepped back, my lips burning, my mind reeling. The taste of him, whiskey and iron and rage, was branded on my mouth. He did not apologize. He did not smile. He just watched me, his dark eyes stripped bare, his chest heaving. The king had been toppled, not by an enemy but by a traitor, and the waitress had been the one to save his crown. "Lena," he said, his voice a low rasp, and my name, on his lips, suddenly sounded different. It was not a name he had read in a file. It was a name he had shouted in a hail of gunfire. It was his... I did not answer. I walked out of the office, my legs steady. I went upstairs, not to the room he had given me, but to his. It was dark, massive, and smelled of him. I did not turn on the lights. I just went to the window and looked out at the high stone walls. The cage. But the walls did not feel like a prison anymore. They felt like a border. The border between the world that had tried to kill me and the world that I had just claimed. I heard him come up the stairs, his steps heavy. He stopped in the doorway of the bedroom. I did not turn. I just watched the moon light up the edges of the stone. "You are in my room," he said. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact. "You're in my life," I replied. "I think we are even." I heard him move, shedding his torn, bloody shirt, the sound of the fabric hitting the floor, the clink of his belt buckle. He did not come to the window. He went to the bed. The springs groaned as he sat down, then sighed as he lay back. He was wounded, exhausted, and broken. I stayed at that window for an hour, or maybe it was a lifetime. I was finally, truly seeing the choice. I could walk out. I could walk out that front gate, and he would not stop me. Not now. He was too broken. I could go back to Brooklyn, find a new diner, a new apartment, and pretend the last few weeks had been a nightmare. I could go back to being invisible. Or I could turn around. I turned around. In the dim light from the window, I could see his shape on the bed. He was on his back, one arm thrown over his eyes, the other resting on his chest, near the bandage. He was not asleep. He was waiting. I walked to the bed. I did not lie down. I sat on the edge, near his feet. "You need to rest, Rocco," I said. He did not move his arm. "I cannot close my eyes," he said, his voice flat. "I see his face." "Tony, he was my brother." "He was a snake," I said, my voice hard, "and you cut off his head. Now it is over." "You think so?" He let out a dry, harsh laugh. "You cut the head off one snake, and two more grow in its place. This is not over. It is never over." I thought of my old life, the dread of the first of the month, the fear of walking home in the dark, the constant, grinding worry about money, about food, about survival. "Nothing is ever over," I agreed. "You just pick your war." He finally moved his arm, looking at me in the shadows. His gaze was heavy, searching. He was seeing me, not as a debt, not as a pawn, not as a key. He was seeing the woman who had just sat on his bed, in his room, in the dark, and was not afraid of him. "You picked your war, Lena," he asked. "You picked it for me." I said, "You dragged me into it, but I was the one who finished it." "Yes, you did." We stayed like that, in the quiet, for a long time, the king and the queen, in their fortress, surrounded by enemies, betrayed by family, and in that silence, I made my choice. I stood up, and I began to undress. His eyes never left me. It was not with hunger, not the way men had looked at me before. It was with a kind of dark, stunned reverence, as if I were a miracle he could not understand. I was not his. I was not his property, not his debt, not his prisoner. I was his equal. I slid into the bed beside him, pulling the cool sheets over us. I did not touch him. I just lay there, on my back, staring at the ceiling. "Get some sleep, Rocco," I whispered. "We have work to do tomorrow." He did not answer, but a few minutes later, his breathing finally deepened. His hand, in the space between us, found mine. He did not grab it. He just laid his fingers over the back of it, a simple human touch, and we slept. The next few months were a blur. The D'Angelo family had been cut deep, but the rot had been exposed. Rocco was a changed man. The hollow grief passed, replaced by a cold, focused efficiency. But it was different now. He was not alone. I was at his side, not as his wife in the way the world saw it, but as his right hand. I sat in his office, in our office, and I listened, his men, who had first seen me as a curiosity, then as a protected pet, now looked at me with an awe that bordered on fear. I was the one who had seen the betrayal. I was the one who had closed the gate. I was the one the boss listened to. I learned the business. I learned the routes, the accounts, the names. My mind, which had been sharp enough to survive Brooklyn, was electric in this world. I saw patterns he missed. I saw the whispers of lies before they became threats. And Rocco, he changed. He started to share. He would sit with me late at night, not with whiskey, but with coffee, and he would talk, not about the violence, but about the burden, the weight of all those lives, all that power. The betrayal had broken his trust in the men he had known his whole life. And he had, against all reason, placed that trust in me, the stranger, the waitress. "You were right, Matt," he said, one night, months later. We were in the office, but the war board was gone. It was replaced with maps, charts, balance sheets. It is never over. "Another snake?" I asked, looking over a ledger. "A different kind," he said. He stood up and walked to a cabinet I had never seen him open. He unlocked it. Inside were not guns or cash. They were blueprints, rolled-up tubes of architectural drawings. He pulled one out and spread it on the desk, weighing the corners down. I looked at it. It was not a fortress. It was a block of buildings, apartment buildings, a park, a community center. I looked at the title block, the DeGraw Project. My heart stopped. 417 DeGraw Street, my old apartment, my old life. "What is this?" I whispered. "That is the future," he said, his voice quiet. He looked at the blueprint, his eyes filled with a different kind of fire. Not rage, not passion, it was ambition. A cold, clean, burning ambition. "I do not understand, mate. This is legitimate." "It is," he said. "Vito. Tony. They were small men. They wanted money. They wanted territory. They wanted to be the biggest rats in the sewer." He looked up at me. "I'm tired of the sewer, Lena." He pulled out another blueprint. The docks, a new shipping terminal, a trade hub, all legitimate. "This is the plan," he said. His voice so low I had to lean in. "This is the real war. My father, his father. They built an empire of fear. It is all I have ever known. But it is built on sand. It rots from the inside. Tony proved that. You cannot trust an empire of criminals." "So you are leaving?" I asked, my mind reeling. "Leaving?" He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "No, you do not leave. You do not just sell your properties and retire to Florida. That is a fantasy. The power is real. The money is real. The family is real. You do not leave it. You change it." He tapped the blueprint. "You take the money from the streets, and you wash it. You wash it so clean it sparkles. You buy the buildings that men like Vito let rot. You buy the politicians they had in their pocket. You buy the entire corrupt, broken system. You are not becoming legitimate, Rocco," I whispered, the scale of it dawning on me. "You are buying the whole city. You are just doing it with contracts instead of guns. To build in this world, to really change things," Sakitya, he said, his hand resting on the plans. "You need to own the foundations. The foundations are dirty, but what you build on top of them, that can be clean." He looked at me, his face open, vulnerable in a way I had never seen. This was his true secret, not his violence, his hope. "This was my father's dream, before he lost his way," he said, "and it is mine. But I was alone. I was surrounded by men who only understood the gun, men like Tony." He held out his hand, the same hand he had offered me in the car, so long ago, the hand I had refused. "I cannot do this alone," he said, his voice raw. "I need someone I can trust, someone who sees the trap before it is sprung, someone who sees the world for what it is. I need a queen." I looked at his hand, the hand that had clamped my wrist in the ballroom, the hand that had shielded me from bullets, the hand that had held mine in the dark, the hand that was now offering me an empire. My old life was gone. The waitress was a ghost. My fear was gone. I knew who I was. I placed my hand in his. His grip was warm and strong, and it felt like coming home. Then let's build an empire. Rocco, I said. He did not kiss me. He just held my hand, his thumb tracing my knuckles. He pulled me to his side, and we stood together, looking down at the plans for our city. It was not a happily ever after. I knew there would be more blood, more snakes. The world was not a fairy tale. But I was not a damsel. I was not a prisoner. I was not a waitress who had crashed a party. I was Lena D'Angelo, and I had just inherited a war. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to connect and share thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach more people.